LSU, Alabama, prime time, Bryant-Denny Stadium, 7:45 Eastern on CBS. It's the doubleheader, but it is the game of the week within the games of the week. College football playoff game. Again, don't let them tell you it's not. We got the Once Upon a Saturday tour in town. I'll be on the sidelines front and center for this game. It is going to be lively, to say the least, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And speaking of lively, I heard some debate, or what some would call debate, earlier today. And the debate was this. If LSU runs the table, do they go to the playoff? My answer is yeah. Yeah. LSU's playoff hopes are very much alive. And the reason is because I'm still a believer we could have a two-loss team in the playoff. And if you tell me there's a two-loss team out there that's an SEC champion, which they would be in this scenario, and they went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, and then maybe they beat Georgia in Atlanta, you're going to keep them out? But what, because they sacked up and scheduled a big marquee out-of-conference opponent instead of doubling up on cupcakes to start the season? No, I don't think that's the case. The odds presented by FanDuel on this game right now, Alabama -3. Bama was a bigger favorite in the 2019 game at home, which your boy was also at. And one day, I'll tell you a story about that game. But it is a statute of limitation situation for me right now, especially with Secret Service, so I can't get into it. I think, about 10 people watching know the story. I'll tell you one day. This is going to be what Meemaw would call a chunk play special. Bama, kind of a pre-paper popper here. Bama is 9th in pass plays of 40-plus yards this season. So it's very obvious what their game plan is. They've just been able to execute it. Even in the A&M game, they were able to execute it. LSU, the reason I bring this up, LSU is 92nd in those plays allowed. And they're down DBs. Like defensive back is a very vulnerable position that was already vulnerable before absences for LSU. So everybody, including LSU fans, are looking at this game saying, oh my goodness, man, what are they going to do? Like up top, what are they going to do? Well, the answer is probably get abused a little bit. That's probably what's going to happen. Here's what's more interesting to me as you start to try and map out the path for Alabama in this game. Like, how will they go about things? Because you think, well, Milroe's really good throwing the deep ball. LSU looks very vulnerable in the back end, but LSU is also 88th in run defense. And if you talk about trying to limit possessions, if you talk about maybe having Jaden Daniels on the field, a couple of less possessions per game, well, it's running the ball. Bama hadn't been all that great at it. I would say they've been improving, especially when you incorporate some of the option principles that they've done as of late with Milroe. And I would imagine also when it comes to self-scouting and using the bye week properly, they had to have gotten inside that film room and looked and said, this gives us the best chance to win. We got to use his legs more creatively. I think they will. Which begs the question, how effectively does Bama run the ball? I think they'll torch LSU to some degree if they don't run the ball effectively. If they do run the ball effectively, Alabama can score 50 points in this game. And that's not the kind of Bama team this is this year. But if they can do both those things effectively, they can score half 100 in this game because that's how vulnerable LSU is on the back end right now. What does LSU do on defense then? Because I said the line's 3, not 30. This is home field advantage, basically. Vegas looking, telling you these are evenly matched teams. By the way, JP poll has had LSU steadily climbing. We've got them, what do we have them, Jesse, like 7 or 8 this week, and people have been asking, how? Odds makers are backing us up. You think the folks at FanDuel are putting LSU +3 in Tuscaloosa if they don't believe they're one of the 10 best teams in the country too? Either that or they think Bama sucks. And I can promise you from an odds-making perspective, no one thinks Alabama sucks. So what does LSU do on defense? They're depleted in the secondary. We just talked about that. They got to go after Jalen Milroe. They got to do what A&M did, basically. They're just not as equipped to do it, or the numbers say they're not as equipped to do it. LSU is, what are they, 99th, Jesse? I can't read my own handwriting. Are they 99th in sacks this year? Irrelevant. This game, it's got to be irrelevant is my point. But you've got to sort of invert some of your stat profiles. You've got to go after him. You may have to use your defensive personnel in different ways than you've done this year to go after him. Because what you cannot do is you can't just drop into coverage. You can't allow him to pick you apart. He will. Most quarterbacks in the country would pick this secondary apart right now. Milroe absolutely can. He just has the added weapon and added dimension of the fact that he's a freight train when he gets loose running the ball. You got to roll the dice. Now, the response to that is, well, Josh, if they roll the dice like that, man, it's going to open them up to big plays. Maybe they'll get home. Maybe they'll sack him a couple of times, but they're going to open themselves up to some big plays. They're open to it anyway. Yeah, I understand what I'm saying. This is not going to be foolproof. You'll give up some explosives. You're going to give them up anyway. Can you get something in exchange? That's got to be the proposition for LSU defensively. I'm talking about maybe when you sack him one time, he doesn't hold on to the ball. Maybe you force him or tip a ball and it lands in your hands instead of Alabama's. You can score. See, A&M couldn't. So A&M, they got to Milroe. They pressured him. They got some sacks. They forced a turnover. They couldn't take advantage. And that's why Bama scoring in the low to mid-20s was enough. That shouldn't be enough to beat you. So you can take your chances a little bit here if you're LSU. The winner of this game, whoever it is, I think is going to win because they're doing that November engine rev. Either one of these teams is capable of winning a national title or capable of competing for it. Let me say they're capable of being in the playoff because LSU's got maybe the best offense in the country, one of the very best. Bama complementary style plays a good enough brand of ball to get in the playoff that they can personnel-wise match up with anybody in the country. And you probably will see a level of play in this game from the winner, whoever it is, that is above and beyond what we've seen from them so far this year. So by default, I think you've got a playoff contender coming out of this game. Late season momentum is a big deal. I'll tell you what else would be a big deal. If they win this game, Daniels is a Heisman possible front runner. The odds right now have him up there. I think everyone's been waiting on this game for Jaden Daniels. Everyone's been looking at this one saying, can you do in Tuscaloosa what Joe Burrow did? Because, look, as serious as the country was already taking Burrow in 2019, everyone had a yeah, but. And it was, yeah, but what's he going to do when he plays Alabama? I think they had 33 on the board at the half, something like that. He made his name that Saturday afternoon. Will we see Mr. Daniels make his name Saturday afternoon? And on the flip side, this right here is the kind of game Kevin Steele's at Alabama for. The kind of attitude you have to have defensively, the willingness to get right back up when you get hit, because they're going to hit you a few times. You got to be relentless. You got to have a memory that's about 5 milliseconds deep. When they hit you with that big play, right back line of scrimmage, no head hung, and you got to just keep competing and keep swinging because you're good enough defensively to where you'll win some of those exchanges. They didn't have that last couple of years when they needed to. Kevin Steele's had a different attitude in that defense so far this year. All right, let's take a look at what the Vegas number is at FanDuel, which I said is Alabama -3. The model actually leans Alabama more heavily. I've known this was coming for a couple of weeks because I've been running the game simulated style for a couple of weeks. I actually, I like Alabama in this game. I like them above and beyond the 3. I think the model's right. I am so spicy on that not only am I going to pick Alabama to win and cover, we're actually adding it on the Ramen Noodle Express. We're going to make it a best bet. So Alabama wins, Alabama covers, and we are going to add it on the Ramen Noodle Express. And if I'm right, then I think they are obviously in the driver's seat to go to Atlanta and maybe beyond. We'll see what happens if they get there. But if I'm wrong, LSU becomes the most fascinating case study in America. We've never had one of those 2-loss teams in the playoff. You think anyone in Athens, Georgia would be looking at that defense or that offense saying, can't wait to play them? Is the team in Athens, Georgia the one they would play in the SEC championship game if he got there? You know, a lot of questions that still remain. That is why, as Mimo always taught me, God invented November. But remember, I haven't gotten to tell you this week, the Week 10 Once Upon a Saturday Tour t-shirt is available. PateStateMaterial.com. It's ready. It's waiting for you. This shirt will no longer be available as of Saturday night. So it's first come, first serve, and we always do really, really well when we go to Alabama. I expect this to be no different. It is wonderful quality. I have gotten nothing but positive feedback on the quality of those shirts. They feel good, man. They feel really good. You'll probably end up wearing that to family reunion and church. Some of you may appear in court wearing that shirt. I don't care. We want representation regardless, and we thank you for it.